Hey, it's Nicole. Welcome back to the show. We're so excited to have you here listening with us and to introduce you to Lauren. She is an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and CEO of the Quintessa Marketing Company, one that is described to disrupt the legal marketing industry in the US. I'm so excited to have her and Matt in the room. You know how many times Matt will say as the non-marketer, but he always has this good ear for marketing. So I'm so excited to introduce these two. Also, she is not just a business owner, but she is a wife and a mom, knowing what it's like to juggle all the things. I'm excited to dig in with her today.
Hey, if you're an entrepreneur who usually fast forwards intros just like this one, this is the podcast for you.
Lauren, welcome to the show.
Hi,
Thank
Lauren.
you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, just a reminder, our show is brought to you by SmartCookie Media, where we believe data tells a story, and not just any story, your business story. As a subscriber to the show or as a client, you'll get insights on profitable, data-driven marketing strategies that work for you and your business, your industry. Not some cookie cutter trends, no. Ideas that are led by your customer data so you know they'll work for you. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram to learn more. Everything's in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the show. How would you finish this sentence? You know you're an entrepreneur when?
You know you're an entrepreneur whenever you've disrupted an industry or just been a disruptor in that field.
Tell us more about that. What do you do? What businesses do you own?
So Quintessa, what we do and why it was really founded is to be able to help personal injury lawyers get access to more leads through retainers. So for instance, instead of normal lead generation, so instead of just a name and a phone number, we took it a step further and we signed the client up for the actual attorney. So we were the pioneers of this in the industry, and we're the only one who's been successful at scale in the United States with it. So a lot of people that used to say lead gen is the only way are now shifting and moving into retainers. And so it's been a pretty amazing thing to see it, evolve over the last 6 years.
Incredible.
So help me understand, like when I heard you were coming on the show today, I was like, oh, sounds really interesting. I'll be honest, I'm not a personal injury attorney, so I can kind of play the card of no idea about any of this stuff, just like anybody else probably listening today. Yeah, and then Nicole's raising her hand, right? But what's the difference between like these national quote names of law firms, your Lerner and Rose, the concepts like that, where they're using state counsel, state attorneys, and they are this national name behind stuff versus you saying we're a marketing agency that signs the client up for the attorney? What's the difference between them?
Yeah. So take Lerner & Rowe, for instance. They're a really large law firm in the United States, and they're across everywhere. They probably started in the 1980s, 1990s, whenever it became legal to start doing TV commercials. Some of these big box law firms, they had a hold on the market. And our goal was to be able to make it to where everyone should be able to have a market share, whether you're the largest in the state or whether you're a smaller or medium-sized player. And they don't have the budgets to compete with some of the bigger law firms because they've been doing it for 20 plus years. I used to do TV commercials for some of the bigger law firms, and I would help them with their SEO and I would do their brand. But the problem is when you get a lawyer ranked number one, there's nowhere else to really rank them. And so if you're really good at your job, you end up losing your job because there's nowhere else to take them. And so because of that, it was, well, what if I just did this on my own brand and then just made it to where no one could control my brand but me? So if they decided to leave, that's fine. I'll just go to your competitor and sell the same leads. And then we were able to assert control of the market. And so that's what we do. So because we have multiple clients, we're able to spend as much as some of the larger law firms and give the medium-sized player a chance to be able to compete with them and get good cases. Lawyers go to law school to be a lawyer, not to be a marketer. And so we're trying to let them do that.
Yeah, Nicole is always on me on why I went to law school. She goes, you just should have stuck with business and sales and marketing. And why'd you leave us? She's like, but I guess
something about loving the student loans or something. I don't know.
Loving the student loans. That's what it was. I guess my question was the difference between you guys operating as an agency when you say we sign up the clients versus these national law firms that quote sign up the clients, but they're doing so through state appointed counsel. So, I mean, you're taking their retainer agreements or there's a referral agreement between your firm and them. I guess that's the question.
Yeah. So they pay per lead. So we're not getting like a back end split or anything like that. It is just simply John Doe lawyer, law firm calls us, says, hey, my intake staff, they're just not doing their job. We're losing too many cases. I need more cases. And we say, great, how many do you need? And then we have a staff of 65 people here in Oklahoma.
Wow.
We turn on the marketing. Within 24 hours, they start receiving retainers. So it is a proven process to where it is just, you need cases, you need leads, you come to us, we help you, and you're able to scale your firm without having to necessarily scale the intake, which is the hardest people to manage,
Sure.
right? And so we've taken that out of it for them.
Okay, so that's really, really powerful. I'd love to know what led you down this specific path. Was there a specific moment or an event or an experience that you knew this would be your life's work?
You know, if you would have told me 20 years ago I'd be doing personal injury, I'd say, what's personal injury? Like, I had no idea. So it was not something that I went to school for or wanted to be a lawyer. I absolutely wanted nothing to do with attorneys. That was not my thing. So I was going to college for marketing and for advertising. And in '08, whenever the economy crashed, I had friends who had graduated and they couldn't even get hired at Target. I was working at AT&T just as a salesman, and a entrepreneur came in. He tried to return a phone. I turned around and sold it back to him. And he said, hey, I really need some salespeople, but I'm also looking for an executive assistant. We have a personal injury TV commercial company, and you would need to spend time in Oklahoma and in Dallas. Well, I mean, back then, if you've moved to Dallas or if you worked in Dallas, you've made it. That was a big lure for me. And so I started working in Dallas. I started being able to be around all these personal injury lawyers. I would just chauffeur them around, pick them up from the airport, help them with their scripts, help them with different things, and then be on set. But through that, I just started to know the industry. And so I worked my way up from the executive assistant of that company and then started their SEO division and then ended up running the company after years of working there. And after all that happened, I had my daughter and I did not want to be in Texas anymore. So I wanted to move back to Oklahoma. When I did that, I got to be a CEO of a law firm in Newport Beach for a little bit. And so I would spend a week there and a week in Oklahoma, but I was missing my 1-year-old. And so I just told the attorney, I said, hey, instead of doing your advertising for you, if I could just sell it on a per lead basis and not go to Newport anymore, love Newport, but just need to be at home more and miss my family and want to do that. And if I could do that, would you buy leads that way? And he said, absolutely. So that's how Quintessa was born. So I was at the Quintessa winery in Sonoma whenever I had the idea. And I was wine tasting at 10 a.m., which is, I guess, a great time to get great ideas. So I'm with my best friend celebrating my 30th birthday, having this idea and eating in and out, talking about it after. And then within a week, Quintessa was born, started with 1 employee. And now we've got, I think, close to 75.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. And what year was that?
So that was in 2016.
Yeah. Oh
Wow.
my goodness. Incredible. Incredible. So you have your law degree
No, not at all. I don't even have a degree at all.
and you work with attorneys. Bless you. Bless your heart. Gotta take a special person. I mean, clearly I work with one, but we've known each other since undergrad. And so hard to get away from a good friend for that.
And she says lawyers are her favorite clients in the marketing space, right? Right? Wasn't there a discussion one time?
Oh, you're going through a tunnel.
Oh, shit.
Okay, incredible. I really would love to dig in a little bit more about how you went from attorneys were just getting leads, just a name, and how you spun that on its head. So there must have been some inspiration somewhere that you were like, they need more than that. So can you walk me through that or how that might apply to other industries that are considering the same thing? How could they get what I would call qualified leads, right? Something that's a little bit more than this cold name and number.
Yeah. So when I was talking with attorneys, I would really just listen. I'd ask them what issues they were seeing or, what was preventing growth in their law firm. But for the first 2 years, I really did a lot of listening and just hearing what they were talking about because these guys were the biggest in the nation. So they're worth 10, 15, 20, $30 million. And so I'm soaking up everything they're saying. And then whenever I started the SEO, just ranking them on Google, we had hired an outside agency to handle it and to help us with it. And so what I did was say, hey, if I could figure this out, I want to be able to take a part of it. And the company said, yeah, you can do that. But what we saw is as I started doing it, I started ranking them higher and their calls would go up. Their cases didn't correlate to the percentage of growth on the calls. So then we started listening to phone calls, and then we started hearing what their intake staff were saying. I mean, this is sales. So how much do your intake staff get paid? Like, oh, minimum wage. And my mouth dropped. I'm like, so you spend $1 million a month on TV and you're paying minimum wage for people to handle these phone calls. That just does not make any sense to me. So as I started to listen to calls, I mean, it was just like every step I took, like I was breaking out in hive as I was hearing everything. I'm like, this is horrible. Like, this is such a horrible business model. Like, I don't know how you make money. So then I started doing intake training and intake coaching, but I would leave and then they would revert right back. And so the question was, well, what if I just hired my own intake reps? Like, so it's really the type A in me, because my problem is I knew the product was better. And the competitive part of me was like, I can do anything better than you. I promise you I can on the intake, except like go, try a case in front of a jury. Like, marketing is my thing. Intake is my thing. Sales are my thing. So let me just prove it to you. Every single step after that, it was, okay, they have a need. They can't do it on their own. They need to be a lawyer. So I'm going to let them do what they do best. And they're going to pay me to do what I do best. But the blend of it all should end up resulting in a much higher multiple. And so that was the whole vision. So that's how it was really born, out of just a necessity.
And I used to work with a national company for marketing and operation support for lawyers too as well. And what's funny is we would hear the same thing all the time. They'd be like, well, I pay $10 an hour. I pay $12 an hour. And I'm like, that's the main person between you and them. That's the direct link, all customer service, everything, because they don't get to you without going through them. And you're paying them $10 an hour. It blew my mind when I kept asking them, like, why are you not looking for somebody with a little more aptitude to be able to do the job? And in this case, for you, I mean, obviously PI, getting them signed, going through the intake process is huge. Maybe lawyers miss the mark sometimes on some of those operational issues, or they're cheap, but it's more than that. It really is more than that. And it kind of comes down to, what are you willing to risk? Because honestly, you can't be mad at your marketing company if they're filling the funnel, they're supplying the leads, but you're not closing those leads, right?
Right.
So that it makes total sense.
It does. What is interesting, and I mean this lovingly, but I think there is something about lawyers, doctors too. You have to have some type of ego about yourself, right? And to think that it has been missed until Quintessa was born with a little sip at a winery, to take that off their plate, like the same way you said, like, I can do it better. It's surprising to me that a group that is known to know their stuff, that they wouldn't have thought this through on not paying just minimum wage, like not figuring out how do we incentivize and motivate.
We pay a lot of money to our employees, but also my whole point, when I moved back to Oklahoma initially, before I decided I was going to start my company, I tried to get hired at one of the largest employers here, and you can't get hired unless you have a degree, which to me was just, I'm like, so I just want to make sure I've run a company, made them millions of dollars, but I can't work here because I don't have a piece of paper. And so that just pissed me off even more. And so that's our hiring practice. We're founded out of that. And I'm like, listen, if you've got grit, if you need a second chance, if you can prove it, and you can put your money where your mouth is, you're going to get paid a lot of money. You can make 100 plus a year. And in Oklahoma, a good living is 40, 45, like good living. Our people are paid hourly, but they're paid per retainer they get signed. And so someone who may have finished high school may not have finished high school. Some of these kids are getting a $5,000 bonus a month. I mean, 22 years old, 5,000 extra a month. Like, that's amazing. Now they're making tons of money for the attorney, but it makes the whole world go round. We're changing the employees' lives, we're changing the attorneys, and we're changing the injured victim. Like, we're putting everybody in the right hands. So it makes everyone happy.
Nice.
Incredible. Tell me, when was the last time you were distracted in your business?
And I think our greatest story of all time was in December of 21. The model used to be, we're going to sign retainers, we're going to send you the lead, and if it doesn't work out, you can refund it. The problem is, when you get at scale with some of these lawyers, we were seeing that it used to be a 20 to 50% return rate. We had some attorneys returning 80% of the leads. And you would see our cash flow go like this, and same with our profit margin. I remember almost just feeling just defeated. Like, okay, I know this idea is great. I know that we're changing the industry. I see the cases they're getting, but this is broken. This is absolutely broken. And so I sat in my office, in this office that I'm in now, and I shut my door for like 6 hours, put in my AirPods, put on like my comfy sweatpants, right? And I was like going on the board, like figuring out, okay, what could we do? What could we change? What's the issue? So we were surveying the attorneys, seeing the contention, trying to figure it out, talking to the employees. And what we did is we flipped the model on its head. And what we said is, okay, what if we went to market and we said no refunds? Because what's the biggest source of contention? And it's telling a lawyer, no, you can't have this refund. And the lawyer saying, no, I have to have it. And so what if we eliminated it? Like, how much peace would it bring to all parties for Quintessa, for the law firm? So what I did was, if we didn't offer refunds, what price point could I sell leads at? So we actually lowered our price by 40% and changed the entire model. And when we did that, you saw our profit margin quadruple in the first quarter. And it was because the law firm was able, when we were able to have conversations with them, it was about, tell me how the cases are going. What is your cost per acquisition? How are the clients doing? Are there anything we can help you out on, instead of this contention about refunds? And so when we eliminated that issue, it really allowed us to scale, and it's proven out. And so we had our greatest growth in 22. We went from 20 to 40 million. We had to go through those growing pains and losing attorneys and having those contentious arguments. We just told our attorneys, like, listen, you don't get refunds from TV stations. You don't get refunds from SEO or from Google. And you need to treat us like a partner, because at the end of the day, what we're doing is what a partner does. We're not just sending you 5 leads. You're asking us to pull 100 leads out of a market, and no one can do that. So if you want us to do it, you're going to do it our way. Right. And that for us was a big moment, because it was, every attorney's not right for us. So we turn down attorneys, because it's, you either work with us our way, because we have over 50 law firms that do. And if you don't, that's great, but you don't fit our mold. And that's okay. But we can't pivot. You have to work the way that we know is successful.
So do all of your law firms participate in some format of your in-house intake specialist, or do any of them take ownership of that themselves and run with that?
No, we don't allow it.
You don't allow it? Okay.
No. And they sign up, we get their retainer, we start sending leads the next day, they're getting cases signed, and we live transfer it to their intake. We do the follow-up for 7 days. And then we have weekly phone calls ensuring that they're hitting their target CPA, they've got a good conversion rate and things like that. But anyone who says like, yeah, let me just take live transfers, we say no. Like, we've tried it with some, and I'm like, I'll let you try it for a week, and then I'm going to try it for a week. And then you're going to stay with me doing it this way, because your CPA, it's always going to be higher, just because our people have more skin in the game for incentives, or they're just hungrier. We've hired the right people. They're not receptionists, they're salesmen.
Oh, I love it, because as marketers, we all follow the data, right? We're all watching it like a hawk. And as a marketer, what drives me nuts, like what makes me cringe, is when I can help somebody solve a traffic problem. They think that the problem is leads. And I tell every one of them every single time, it's not going to be your problem. Like, there's not a traffic or leads problem. There are plenty out there for you. It's going to be a conversion problem. But I don't always get to get in the middle of that. The reality is, so many entrepreneurs, so many service providers, high ticket at that. We work with a lot of portrait photographers across the country and Canada. They have their own job to do. You said it. Lawyers go to law school, right? Not to be a marketer. And we're watching our people drain the most important, precious thing that they have, not enough of, which is their energy.
I think the biggest point for me, like, I started with this with $5,000 and I had a mountain of debt. I was going through a divorce. So to me, when you say like, hey, like, you've got to have this, I'm like, that's fantastic. That sounds great. I can't trust anybody to do it, because if I miss one lead,
right,
that's dinner. That's taking care of my daughter.
Right.
So I think you have kind of that mindset, like the scarcity mindset. But the biggest challenge that I ever was presented with was, okay, but if I could find someone who could do it 80% as good as you, just 80.
Yeah.
And if you could see them do it, how much would that free you up to do the things that you're good at? And so whenever I started backing up and seeing it from that perspective, that's really when you see growth happen.
Lauren, tell me this. What's one of the biggest challenges you're finding right now being Lauren, the business owner?
The complexity and growth. I love to say, like, you want to keep it simple, stupid, right? Like, you just want to keep your processes so clean. And what I've seen is, the bigger we've grown, the Quintessa I started is not the Quintessa of now. So I think as a business owner right now and as CEO, I've casted my vision. We have that casted out. But what I'm seeing is it's almost overcomplicated because people don't think they can meet that vision without adding, a lot more steps or a lot more processes. So it's what can we cut out? How can we make it clean? How can we make the vision very simple for all of our employees? So I feel like that's been the biggest challenge as of late. We give away half of our profit. So for me, when I start seeing profit dip at all, it's a signal of one of our areas is not as at par as what they should be. And then every time I go into that department and I sit and I watch and I listen, this is too complicated. This is too much. You can't even do your entire day in a job because you have too many steps.
Where do you think that comes from in organizations? Like, where do you think this need to, quote, as you say, complicate it comes from? Because it happens in every business.
One thing that I had to start doing was explaining, hey, if this has worked for 6 years, let's not change it. Like you take McDonald's, right? Like they don't change their fries. They don't change how they make the Big Mac. They don't change the bun. They don't change the cheese. But you know what they may do is they may get something to make it faster, right? They may make the processes around it cleaner, but they don't add in more things or take away more things. And so I think what happens is someone looks at this, and every time in any industry you go in, if you're hired, you look at something, you're like, I got a problem fixed. I can figure this out. If you add steps A through Z, then it's handled. And sometimes a manager is saying, no, we don't change. You watch. You do it. Let's do it for 90 days. After 90 days, give me your input. Let's see how much it would change. But if it's going to overcomplicate and cascade throughout the company because they're thinking about their one department, they're not thinking how marketing may affect intake or it could affect sales, right? By adding these extra layers. I think it's all done with good intentions. It's just no one thinks through a flow chart of what's going to happen. I compare it to almost to like when you're throwing a rock on the water, you see the ripples, right? So how many ripples go out? What happens?
Right.
That's been our challenge as of late that we've seen with new employees.
Okay, so tell me, one of the points we wanted to go over with you is how you invest in other local women-owned businesses. Tell me more about that.
So we invest in different women-owned businesses and then female-focused to charities or just structure. So one of the big companies that we invest into is Remerge. So they're a charitable organization. But there's a time in my life where I was in a really bad relationship, it was an abusive relationship. And like the prodigal son, pretty much coming back to my parents, they helped me and get me back on my feet. And I was in my 20s. And there's a lot of women, I feel like, that they don't have that stability. They don't have that mom and dad to go back to. And they end up turning to things just because you don't know what you don't know. So one of the things that I felt very challenged with was I want to help women who were in the same situations that instead of I went right, they went left. And so we're really focused with giving women second chances. But then two, female entrepreneurs just in Oklahoma, there's not a lot of resources for them. Like when I started my company, I was having to take out the loans where you're paying back daily interest, like the crazy loans, because I didn't have any assets, going through a divorce, mountain of debt. There was no one to turn to except for males, no offense. And then sometimes the guys you turn to are sleazeballs. And so I had no one. I mean, for 5 years, there were no female entrepreneurs. There was just nothing there were just no resources. And it really bothered me. So the minute in 22, when we started growing as much, my now husband was telling me, hey, like the business is growing, processes are coming, you're having time freed up. You love doing this. You love helping people and problem solving. Why don't you start? Like, why don't you actually start? So he pushed me into doing podcasts, helping different charities. And so I get to sit and talk with different owners. And there have been people that they say they need a financial investment, but then when we sit down for a couple hours, it's not the money they need, it's the process improvement they need. So I've been really open with a lot of our female business owners. I'm like, if you want something or if you need advice, call me. I never want anyone to go through what I've gone through. If my pain can save them from them going down that same path, then I want to do that. And so that's been Quintessa. Even our hiring focus, like 60% here are women. And I just think humility as an entrepreneur, you asked me at the beginning, you're an entrepreneur or a successful entrepreneur is when you've been humbled, right? Like you have had lots of different things happen, but you can either let that mistake or whatever define you and it just changes you the rest of your life, or you can let it refine you. I look at everything and it's like, what have we learned? And how am I never going to go through this again?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these entrepreneurs, they're like, no, I can't say anything because then I don't look like I've got it together. And I'm like, nope, don't have it together. Help me. Like, pick me, please. Give me some help.
Yes.
You mentioned daily interest loans.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get out of it?
At one point I was paying back $22,000 a day. That was my daily interest rate.
Oof.
And every single dollar I made was going to that. But I really believed in what I was doing. I had just had a couple of attorneys not pay me. And my now husband was like, hey, listen, this is eating away all of our cash flow. And so let's sit down and figure out what can we do now? How can we prepare? How can we increase sales to where in 6 months, you're not having to auto renew this again? Because it became just a way of living. Right? I mean, you just make sure there's 22,000 in the account. And so what he said was, hey, if you can bust butt for 4 or 5 months in sales, and he showed me it was possible, then you will be able to make this much money once this is done. I think the problem was, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been 3 months again. Like, yeah, I need that 200 grand. Like, yeah, I need that to keep going because I didn't have a line of credit. What I would challenge him to do is, when is your expiration date? What are you needing it for? Can you increase sales? Can you cut costs? Can you take away even money out of your own pocket for a few months? Because it's a short-term sacrifice, long-term gain. And so if you can do that, then it allows you to get out. And then it allows you to become even bankable, more bankable, because it scares banks completely whenever they see that coming out every day.
Yep.
Yeah. That's so special. I love that you had your husband to do that. I think some people do, or they don't want to lean on someone, but that's where problems get solved, folks.
We talk all the time in the show about our support from our spouses. Mm-hmm. And we always even make jokes about, whether they're entrepreneurs or not. Can I ask you, is he an entrepreneur? Does he work in the business?
So he was running HR for a hospital chain. And so he really helped scale Quintessa. So whenever he came on and started working here, he brought systems and structure. And I was working 18 hours a day when I met him. So he was, you need a COO. And I'm like, yeah, no one can do it as good as me. He's like, but if I could find this, no one had ever challenged me. And so he helped scale it. And so he helps in our company too. But we also have a farm. Oh. Yeah, it's now like a full functioning farm with like cows and chickens and all the things. So he splits time, and then I'm 6 months pregnant. And so so we've got a lot of plates spinning. And so the goal is, we're preparing all of our employees to be able to work on Quintessa without us being in it. He's become like fully functional entrepreneur. Like he sees it. He loves to be able to do stuff like that.
It's funny how us crazy driven type A entrepreneurs end up with our corporate spouses that we're it's like a laugh about it, but it's so great because it balances us, I guess. I don't know what to say.
I mean, it does. And what I love about Leo is every idea I came up with, he would listen and he would say, okay, think about it. A, B, C, and D. Like he would always challenge me. And sometimes I hated it, but it always pushed me to the next level. Without that, I wouldn't have seen the holes. He's just a fantastic asset.
Okay, wait. I just want to tell you that this episode, it's brought to you by Run Like Clockwork. There is a book, there is a program, there's a boot camp, but I want to tell you the reason why this particular episode is here, in fact, the entire show, is because of one commitment I made to make sure my business runs like clockwork. If you're interested in what that system could look like for you so that you have more freedom and flexibility to do the things that you love, say, yes, I want my business to run like clockwork without suffering any type of burnout. If you want more information, of course, reach out anytime, but I also included a link in the show notes. Okay, back to the show.
What's one of your key lessons that you've learned as an entrepreneur? Maybe it's a mantra that you say again and again.
Your mistakes or the lessons you learn in life, they'll either define you or they'll refine you.
Awesome.
Define you
Great.
or refine you.
How would you define entrepreneurial success?
My why has changed since I first started. When I first started, it was to take care of my daughter. Now my why is I want to give people opportunities that I've been given and that I probably shouldn't have been given. So To me, entrepreneurial success is whenever your why becomes about helping others and not just yourself.
Awesome.
Love it.
Awesome.
Tell me, where's a link that someone can find you or connect with you and learn more about what you're up to, whether it's your business or whether it's what you're doing for other locally women-owned businesses?
So I would just say probably my Instagram is the easiest. So it's Lauren Vaughn 22. And so that's where we're always talking about whether we're investing in new companies or doing anything new or working with Quintessa or charity events. That's where it's all announced.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. This is incredible.
Yes.
Really, truly, I wasn't sure what we'd get when we put an attorney and you in the room. And
Hey, it's Nicole, and that's the end of the interview. But stick around. This is the part where Matt and I break it all down and give you our favorite takeaways. Listen in.
okay, so we just got done talking with Lauren.
Yes.
And powerhouse.
Yes.
Like so much good info. So open to share.
Yes.
Really
Exactly.
appreciate it. Yeah. I wasn't sure what we were going to get.
Yeah. I thought it was just me a dog session on lawyers the entire time between you and her and everything else.
I mean, it is fun. It is. Thanks for letting us do that sometimes.
Speaking of.
So you know where I'm going. Right?
Yes.
So my number one takeaway was the confidence, the boldness. It really came down to that she was market listening for so long to who she was going to serve. And what surprised me is lawyers have a bit of ego, a little bit of bravado that their way they know, and they have to, right? You have to. Like, I don't want you to go in and defend me or write up a contract that you're like, I feel okay about it.
Feels
70-30.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
oh, good.
so we want that, but like, imagine her coming to them and be like, listen, I've been listening to y'all for a long time. And what you're doing is silly. Like, that's really essentially what it was. It's silly that you would put your salespeople at the lowest price point.
Right.
There's no skin in the game. They don't have an incentive plan, a bonus plan. Like, it's so obvious that to me, what do you mean that the attorneys, they couldn't see that? And so I love that she just was like, hey, why don't we just take that from you?
Yeah.
And I just really appreciate that. Hey, we can all get it wrong. We can all have our blind spots.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not shocked. I mean,
I know you're
I'm not shocked. I mean, I think, whether it's being cash flow frugal, if you will, and thinking you can get away with a $12 an hour person, maybe being the first person that your client actually talks to, it's a dangerous spot to be when you're talking about the millions of dollars at risk.
Right.
So like
millions.
Millions, yes.
And not even just like the millions of what they could win,
right?
But like the millions to already advertise. And then that's who you're having answer the phone. I think it lends itself to our number 3 takeaway, but we'll come down to it to who's on your team. But okay, so second one for you.
Well, the second one for me had to deal with that. As the show evolved, it was really cool to hear how she goes, if I had to come back to that question, I'd say it's humility, right? For her, it was all about the idea that you almost have to, I don't want to say stack up a couple losses, but have a couple spots where you have to lick your wounds, where you have to learn from your mistakes maybe a little bit and reset, regroup, right? And go back at it and persevere after that next level,
Yeah. It's either going to
what?
Define or refine.
Oh yeah. I thought you were asking me to make up something on the spot.
I would never.
Oh my God.
Never.
It's either gonna make you, well, it's gonna throw something off the cuff.
Okay. Yes. Okay. But yeah, it speaks to resiliency, right? Like
right.
You can be humble. We can all be humbled by plenty of things. It doesn't mean we get back on the bike, but an entrepreneur knows what it means to be humbled, have those losses, trying to figure something out, not work, but yet we're going to get right back up and walking into that next experience with humility.
I also think that has an impact too, as well, because now you're seeing how that manifests with her investing into other businesses, women-owned businesses, and people that need that assistance through humility and remembering where she came from and what happened. So that's fantastic.
I love it.
What else you got?
Another one that I love, of course, it has a data point. It was, what if, asking the question, if somebody who needs to hire faster. I always say entrepreneurs should hire a whole lot faster than they do. And she said, what if you could just hire someone that could do it 80% as good as you? A B. We like B's in school. We didn't mind them. I mean, we like an A in communication, but a B wasn't all that bad in calculus, for example. And I think that sometimes as entrepreneurs, we want to hold on or control, or we think it's easier. And yeah, sometimes it is easier if I just make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich as opposed to the 6-year-old.
Right.
But he can make a pretty good peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Yep.
Let's let somebody come in and work on our business and take it even just 80% of the way, because it just frees us up that much more.
I'm just thinking about when you get too much jelly and it gets way too sweet. No, I'm joking. In reality, she's hit the nail on the head. There has to be a point where you relinquish that control and let that employee start to kind of run with it a little bit. I did find it interesting when we asked her about challenges in the business. When you let those employees tend to run a little bit farther, faster, so to speak, how sometimes it could adjust your process, how it can lose some of your, maybe your business values or what you're trying to do. How she said they really prided themselves on, keeping it simple.
Right.
That's what she said, right?
Yes.
Keep it real simple, right?
Yeah.
And yet people tend to make things more complex out of their own frustration, their own personal experience and bias. And I thought that, it was really interesting seeing how that affects a $20 to $40 million company. They're still having the same pains that you and I might have with a very small, one client, one issue, one customer, one whatever.
Right. Yeah, no, it's so good. Good. So hire faster. Tell them, don't change anything for 90 days.
Oh yeah, that was, don't change it. And she goes, then we'll talk, right?
Yeah, observe.
Oh,
first,
that was,
please.
that was a great learning lesson. Yeah.
Well, folks, if you're listening,
Keep listening.
go to lunch.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Serial Entrepreneur Show, produced by the team here at SmartCookie Media.